Montana Territory, 1872. The Big Sky country stretched endless and unforgiving beyond the boundaries of Fort Benton, where the Missouri River served as the last true lifeline to civilization. In this untamed frontier, a man measured his worth by what he could claim and defend with his own two hands. And by that measure, Donovan Pierce had everything a man could want. At 26, Donovan stood tall among the scattered homesteaders and cattlemen of the Judith Basin. His ranch, the Broken Arrow, boasted 500 head of prime cattle, a sturdy two-story house he'd built with lumber hauled 60 miles by wagon, and enough good grazing land to make lesser men envious. With sandy brown hair that lightened in the summer sun and eyes the color of mountain lakes, Donovan cut a striking figure, whether astride his favorite bay gelding or striding through Fort Benton's muddy streets. But for all his outward success, Donovan Pierce lived by one unshakable belief: a man survived the frontier alone or not at all. He'd watched his father die of fever when he was 14, his mother following just months later, leaving him to make his own way east from Oregon Territory. Trust was a luxury that got men killed. Attachment was weakness enemies exploited. Love was a fiction peddled by those who'd never had to bury their own. A man builds his own kingdom out here, he often told the cowhands who worked his spread, and a kingdom needs only one ruler. His foreman, Henry McAllister, would just shake his gray head. That kingdom's mighty empty when night falls, Don. Donovan would laugh and turn away. Empty was safe. Empty meant no one to lose. The spring cattle drive of 1872 had gone better than expected. Prices in Helena were high, and Donovan returned to the Broken Arrow with enough money to expand his operation further. The morning after his return, he stood on his porch, coffee mug in hand, surveying his domain. The mountains rose purple in the distance, and his cattle dotted the green valley like scattered coins. The ranch house stood proud, though empty save for himself and the bunkhouse crew 100 yards away. Everything a man could want, he murmured, trying to ignore the hollow feeling that had begun to plague him these past winters. He was about to turn back inside when he spotted a dust cloud approaching from the east. Setting his coffee down, he shaded his eyes. A single rider approached, but something about the silhouette seemed wrong. The horse moved with an awkward gait, and the rider appeared to be slumped forward. Donovan grabbed his rifle from inside the door and whistled sharply. Two of his hands emerged from the bunkhouse, alert to trouble. "Someone's coming," he called. "Might be trouble." As the rider drew closer, Donovan could see it was a bay mare, lathered and exhausted. The rider was indeed slumped over, clinging to the saddle horn with what appeared to be the last of their strength. Not until the horse staggered to within 50 yards could Donovan make out that the rider was a young woman, her black hair falling loose around a face streaked with dirt and blood. "Good Lord," he muttered. "Jimmy, get water. Tom, help me with her." The moment his hand touched the horse's bridle, the woman's eyes fluttered open, dark, frightened eyes that fixed on his face with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. She said something in a language he didn't understand, then slipped from the saddle into his arms. She was light, too light, and burning with fever. Her dress, once a simple calico, was torn and bloodied. As he carried her toward the house, Donovan noticed the moccasins on her feet and the distinctive beadwork on the leather pouch tied at her waist. "She's Apache," Tom said warily, hand drifting to his sidearm. "She's half dead," Donovan countered, "and she's on my land. Get back to the bunkhouse and fetch Mrs. Lowell. Tell her to bring her medicines." Inside the house, Donovan laid the unconscious woman on the spare bed. In the better light, he could see she was young, perhaps 19 or 20. Despite the dirt and blood, her features were delicate and striking, high cheekbones, full lips, and skin the color of burnished copper. A jagged cut ran along her hairline, and her right arm showed signs of a poorly bandaged wound. "What have you gotten yourself into?" he whispered. Her eyes opened again, clearer this time. "Water," she said in accented but understandable English, "please." "When Mrs. Lowell arrived, the wife of his oldest ranch hand, who served as the closest thing to a doctor in these parts, she shooed Donovan from the room. For the next hour, he paced the main room of his house, wondering what madness had possessed him to bring an Apache woman into his home. The tribes in this region had been restless since the end of the war, and tensions with settlers increased yearly as more whites pushed into traditional hunting grounds. "She's resting, Mrs. Lowell announced finally, wiping her hands on her apron. Knife wound to the arm, blow to the head in exhaustion, nothing that won't heal with time and care. "Who is she?" Donovan asked. "Says her name is Elena Zamores. Half Apache, half Mexican by her telling. She was fleeing from some men who attacked her people's camp. Been riding 3 days with barely any rest. That's all I could get before she fell asleep. I'll ride to Fort Benton tomorrow, let the authorities know.
Mrs.
Lowell's mouth thinned to a hard line. And what do you think the authorities will do with a half-Apache girl with no people to speak for her? The Indian agent'll pack her off to a reservation faster than you can spit if the soldiers don't decide she's a spy first. Donovan frowned. This isn't my problem, Martha. I can't have an Apache woman living in my house. She's not asking to live here. Just needs a few days to heal before she moves on. Mrs. Lowell gathered her things. Besides, when did Donovan Pierce start turning away those in need? Your father would have been ashamed. The mention of his father stung like a whip. Fine.
3 days, then she goes.
That night Donovan slept poorly, aware of the stranger under his roof. His dreams were troubled by memories long suppressed, his mother's face as fever took her, the long journey east with only his wits to keep him alive, the first time he'd had to kill a man who tried to steal his horse and supplies. By dawn, he was already up and dressed, determined to maintain as much distance as possible from his unexpected guest. His resolve lasted until he found her standing in his kitchen, shakily trying to pour water from the heavy pitcher with her good arm. Here, he said, moving quickly to take it from her before it fell, you should be resting. Elena Zamora straightened, and Donovan was struck by the fierce pride in her bearing despite her injuries. Her black hair had been braided neatly, likely by Mrs. Lowell, and she wore one of Martha's old dresses, too large but clean. She was shorter than he'd realized, the top of her head barely reaching his shoulder, but something in her dark eyes made him feel as though she was looking down at him. I have rested enough, she said. I must go. Go where? Mrs. Lowell said. You've been riding for days. Those wounds need time to heal. There are men looking for me, bad men. I will not bring trouble to your home. Donovan poured her a cup of water and motioned toward the table. Sit, tell me what kind of trouble. Reluctantly, Elena sat. Her hands, he noticed, were small but calloused, the hands of someone who worked hard. She was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps not even 20. My mother was Mexican, she began. My father Apache. I grew up in both worlds, never fully belonging to either. 3 months ago, a man named Barrett came to our village with government papers. He said our land was now part of a mining claim, that we must leave. Barrett? Donovan frowned. Wesley Barrett. Elena nodded, her dark eyes widening. You know this man. I know of him. He's been buying up mining claims all over the territory, using whatever means necessary to clear the land. Some say he has friends in the territorial government. He is a monster, Elena said, her voice hardening. When our chief refused to leave, Barrett returned with armed men. They attacked at night, my people, her voice broke. My mother, my 2 younger brothers, all gone.
And you escaped?
I was returning from gathering herbs with my grandmother. We saw the smoke. She told me to run to find help. I took a horse and rode east. Barrett's men followed. My grandmother, she closed her eyes briefly. I do not think she survived. Donovan's jaw tightened. He'd heard rumors of such clearings happening farther west, but never so close to his own land. And you've been running ever since. 3 days ago they caught up to me. I fought, but there were 4 of them. She touched the bandage on her arm. I managed to get away, but my horse was wounded. I rode as far as she would take me. Which led you here? Donovan ran a hand through his hair. This was exactly the kind of complication he avoided by keeping to himself. Barrett's men won't give up easily.
If they track you here.
I will leave today, Elena said firmly. I have caused enough trouble. And go where, in your condition, you wouldn't last 2 days. That is not your concern. Donovan studied her face, the defiance, the grief, the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. Something twisted in his chest, an unfamiliar feeling he didn't care to examine. Stay, he said abruptly, at least until you're stronger. My ranch is remote enough that Barrett's men won't stumble across it by accident. And if they do come looking, he shrugged, they'll find more than they bargained for. Elena regarded him with suspicion. Why would you help me? You do not know me. Let's just say I've got no love for men like Wesley Barrett. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was easier than admitting he didn't understand his own motivations. Now eat something. Mrs. Lowell will have my hide if you collapse again. Over the next week, Elena's strength returned rapidly. Despite Donovan's insistence that she rest, he often found her helping around the house, cooking, cleaning, even attempting to mend some of his shirts with her good arm. She spoke little of her past, but Donovan learned she was 19 years old and had been educated by missionaries for several years, explaining her command of English. Her mother had been a healer, teaching Elena the use of plants and herbs for medicine. To his ranch hands, Donovan explained Elena's presence as a temporary arrangement, a favor to Martha Lowell, nothing more. But he found himself lingering at the house more than usual, making excuses to check on her welfare. When she asked to help in the garden Martha had started behind the house, he built her a small bench so she could work without standing for too long. "You are kind," Elena said when he presented it, "for a man who tries so hard not to be." Donovan frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You live alone in this big house, no wife, no family, you keep everyone at arm's length. Even your men who respect you do not know you." She tilted her head, studying him. "What are you afraid of, Donovan Pierce?" "I'm not afraid of anything," he said sharply. "I just prefer my own company." "No one prefers to be alone, they only fear the alternative more." Her words haunted him that night as he sat on his porch watching the sunset paint the mountains. Was he afraid? The idea seemed absurd. He'd built everything he had through courage and determination. But Elena's perceptiveness unsettled him, making him question certainties he'd lived by for years. The next morning, he found her sitting on the porch, gazing east toward the rising sun. She wore a simple dress Martha had altered to fit her slighter frame, and her black hair hung loose down her back. Without thinking, Donovan sat beside her. "When I was a child," Elena said without preamble, "my grandmother told me that each sunrise is a new beginning, a chance to leave behind yesterday's sorrows." "Wise woman." "Yes," Elena's voice softened with memory. "She also said that a person's true strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing when to stand with others." Donovan shifted uncomfortably. "Your grandmother and I might have disagreed on that point." "Perhaps," Elena turned to face him. "But I think she would have liked you anyway." Before he could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Donovan stood quickly, hand moving to the pistol at his hip. Through the morning haze, he could make out 3 riders approaching from the north. "Get inside," he told Elena. "Stay away from the windows." Instead, she stood beside him, shading her eyes. "It is too late." "The man on the right, that is one of Barrett's men, the one who gave me this." She touched the healing cut on her forehead. "Damn," Donovan whistled sharply, bringing 2 of his hands running from the bunkhouse. "Jimmy, Tom, we've got visitors." "Be ready." The riders approached slowly, with the deliberate confidence of men used to intimidation. The leader was a thick-set man with a bushy beard and a badly healed scar across his nose. His companions were younger but no less dangerous-looking, with the hard eyes of men who killed for pay rather than principle. "That's far enough," Donovan called when they were 30 yards out.
State your business.
The bearded man reined in his horse, eyes scanning the ranch house before settling on Elena with a slow, unpleasant smile. "Well, now looks like our hunt is over, boys. Morning, miss. You've led us on quite a chase." "This woman is under my protection," Donovan said evenly. "Whatever business you think you have with her, you don't." "Not on my land." "Name's Cutler, I work for Wesley Barrett." The man shifted in his saddle, his coat falling open to reveal a worn holster. "That Apache thief stole property belonging to Mr. Barrett. We're just here to retrieve what's ours and bring her to justice." "I stole nothing," Elena said, her voice steady despite the fear Donovan could sense in her rigid posture. "The only thieves here are Barrett and his men." Cutler's smile vanished. "Watch your mouth, squaw. You're coming with us one way or another." "The lady isn't going anywhere," Donovan said, "and you've got about 10 seconds to get off my land before things get unpleasant." One of the younger men laughed. "There's 3 of us and 2 of you, plus the boss here," he nodded at the house. "Unless you got an army hiding in there." Jimmy stepped forward, rifle raised. "Boss keeps an orderly place. Doesn't cotton to trespassers, especially the thieving kind." Cutler's hand drifted toward his holster. "You calling me a thief, old man?" "I'm calling you a dead man if that hand moves another inch," Donovan said quietly. "Now turn around and ride out. Tell Barrett if he wants to discuss mining claims, he can do it through proper channels." For a tense moment, Cutler seemed to weigh his options, then he spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Pierce. Barrett doesn't take kindly to interference. You'll regret sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." "I already regret having to look at your face. Now get moving." With a final glare, Cutler wheeled his horse around. As they rode away, he called back, "Sleep light, Apache. We'll be seeing you again real soon." Once they were out of sight, Donovan turned to Elena. Her face was pale but composed, only her eyes revealing the depth of her fear. "They will come back," she said, "with more men." "Probably," Donovan nodded to Jimmy and Tom. "Double the watch tonight. No one approaches the ranch without us knowing." When the men returned to the bunkhouse, Elena touched Donovan's arm lightly. "You should not have done that. Now you are in danger because of me." "Barrett's been looking for an excuse to push smaller ranchers out for years," Donovan said. "If it wasn't you, it would have been something else eventually." "Still, I cannot stay." "I will leave tonight while it is dark." "And go where?" Donovan asked, frustration edging his voice. "Alone, wounded, with Barrett's men combing the territory for you. That's not brave, Elena, it's foolish."
Then what do you suggest?
"That I hide here forever while Barrett's men threaten you and your ranch." Donovan ran a hand through his hair. "No, not forever, just until we figure out a better plan." He hesitated, then said more gently, "You're not alone in this anymore."
Understand.
Elena studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found made her nod slowly. "Thank you, Donovan Pierce." That night, after ensuring the ranch was secure, Donovan found Elena sitting by the fire, mending one of his shirts. The flickering light cast warm shadows across her face, highlighting the elegant curve of her cheekbone, the determined set of her mouth. He paused in the doorway, struck by how naturally she fit into the space, a space that had never felt quite so much like home before. "You should sleep," he said, moving into the room. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Elena set aside her mending. "I was thinking about what you said about needing a better plan. I believe I might know someone who could help us."
No.
Before the attack, there was a lawyer in Helena who had been helping our chief with land claims. "A good man," my grandmother said. "If we could reach him, show him what Barrett has done." "It's worth trying," Donovan agreed. "I need to go to Helena soon anyway to sell some horses. We could make the journey together."
It would be dangerous.
"Staying here might be more dangerous." Donovan sat across from her. "Barrett won't give up easily, especially now that he knows where you are." Elena's fingers worried at the fabric in her lap. "Why are you doing this, risking so much for someone you barely know?" It was a question Donovan had been asking himself with increasing frequency. By all logic, the safest course would be to send Elena on her way, to return to his solitary existence. Yet the thought of her facing Barrett's men alone was unbearable in a way he couldn't explain. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I'm tired of watching men like Barrett take whatever they want without consequences." Elena's dark eyes held his. "And maybe you are not as alone as you pretend to be." Something shifted between them then, a recognition that neither was prepared to name. Donovan stood abruptly, uncomfortable with the sudden vulnerability. "We'll leave for Helena day after tomorrow," he said. "Get some rest." As he retreated to his own room, Donovan tried to ignore the unfamiliar warmth that had taken root in his chest, a feeling dangerously close to hope. The journey to Helena would take 4 days of hard riding through rugged country. Donovan spent the next day making preparations, selecting his most trusted hands to accompany them and leaving his foreman in charge of the ranch. Elena insisted on helping, despite her still healing wounds, packing provisions and preparing medicinal herbs for the journey. They set out before dawn, Donovan and Elena accompanied by Jimmy and young Tom Williams, who at 22 was the best shot on the ranch. Elena rode a gentle mare Donovan had chosen for her, wearing men's clothing borrowed from Tom's younger brother and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her distinctive features. For the first day, they saw no sign of pursuit. The spring weather held fair, and they made good time across the rolling grasslands. That evening, as they made camp in a sheltered draw, Donovan found himself watching Elena as she helped prepare the simple meal. Despite her injuries and the danger that followed her, she moved with a quiet grace that spoke of inner strength. "She's something special, that one," Jimmy said, settling beside Donovan with his coffee. "She's just passing through," Donovan replied too quickly. Jimmy chuckled. "Sure, boss, whatever you say." After a moment, he added more seriously, "Been riding with you 8 years now. First time I've seen you stick your neck out this far for anyone. Barrett's been pushing too many people around for too long. Someone needs to stand up to him." "Uh-huh," Jimmy took a sip of his coffee. "And it's got nothing to do with the way you look at her when you think nobody's watching." Donovan scowled. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" "Just saying, boss, life's short on the frontier." Sometimes you gotta grab hold of the good things when they come along. With that, Jimmy wandered off to check the horses, leaving Donovan with thoughts he'd rather not examine. Later, as the others slept, Donovan took first watch, settling on a rock outcropping that offered a view of the surrounding country. The moon hung full and bright, casting silver light across the landscape. He didn't hear Elena's approach until she sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket against the night chill. "You should be sleeping," he said. "I am not used to sleeping with danger so close." She pulled the blanket tighter. "My grandmother taught me to listen to the night. It will tell you when enemies approach." They sat in comfortable silence for a time, the only sounds the soft nickering of the horses and the distant cry of a coyote. "Tell me about your family," Elena said eventually. "You never speak of them." Donovan stiffened. "Not much to tell, they died when I was 14. Fever took them both within months of each other." "I am sorry," Elena's voice was soft with genuine sympathy, and after. "Made my way east from Oregon Territory, worked cattle drives, saved every penny. Built the Broken Arrow from nothing," he shrugged. "End of story." "No, I think that is only the beginning of the story." Elena turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "The rest is what that boy who lost everything became. A man who built walls to keep the world at a distance." "Walls keep you safe," Donovan said. "Do they, or do they just keep you alone?" She touched his arm lightly. "My people believe that the greatest strength comes from connection, to family, to tribe, to the land. A person alone is vulnerable, like a single strand of grass in the wind. But many strands woven together become strong enough to withstand any storm." Something about her words, or perhaps the gentle way she said them, broke through defenses Donovan hadn't even realized he'd built. "After my parents died, I swore I'd never need anyone again. That way, I'd never have to feel that kind of loss." "And have you been happy living by that vow?" The question hung in the night air between them. Before Donovan could formulate an answer, Tom's urgent whisper cut through the darkness. "Riders coming from the south, at least 5 of them." Donovan was on his feet instantly, hand on his rifle. "Wake Jimmy." "Elena, stay low." Through his field glass, Donovan could make out 5 mounted figures moving steadily toward their position, following their trail with unsettling precision. "Barrett's men?" Elena asked, crouching beside him. "Can't tell, but seems likely. They're tracking us too easily to be random travelers," Donovan calculated quickly. "There's a box canyon about a mile northeast, steep walls, narrow entrance. If we can reach it before they catch up, we can defend it better than open ground." Within minutes they had doused the fire and packed their minimal camp. Moving as silently as possible, the small party rode north by the light of the moon. Donovan led them on a winding path, crossing rocky ground where possible to make tracking more difficult. The box canyon appeared as a dark slash in the pale landscape, its narrow entrance barely wide enough for 2 horses abreast. Once inside, the walls rose 30 feet on 3 sides, creating a natural fortress. "Tom, take the horses to the back," Donovan ordered. "Jimmy, you're our best shot. Find a position up high where you can cover the entrance." "What about me?" Elena asked. "Stay with the horses. If things go wrong, there's a game trail at the back that might be passable. Get to Helena and find that lawyer." Her eyes flashed. "I will not run while you fight my battle." "This isn't up for debate, Elena." Donovan checked his rifle, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I need to know you're safe." Before she could protest further, Jimmy called down from his position. "They're coming, 5 riders, same as before." Donovan moved to the entrance of the canyon, positioning himself behind a large boulder. In the moonlight, he could now clearly see Cutler leading the approaching riders. Barrett had wasted no time sending his men after them. "Hold your fire until I give the word," Donovan called. "Let them get close enough that they can't retreat easily." The riders slowed as they approached the canyon, clearly wary of riding into a potential trap. Cutler raised his hand, halting his men 100 yards from the entrance. "Pierce," he shouted, "we know you're in there. Send out the Apache girl and we'll let the rest of you live." "That's mighty generous of you," Donovan called back, "but I've got a counteroffer. Turn around and ride away, and I won't put a bullet in you." Cutler laughed. "You're outnumbered, rancher. Be reasonable. The girl's not worth dying for." "That's where you're wrong." Donovan steadied his rifle. "She's worth a whole lot more than scum like you." With a curse, Cutler drew his revolver and spurred his horse forward. "Take them." The canyon erupted in gunfire. Jimmy's first shot caught one of the riders in the shoulder, sending him tumbling from his horse. Donovan fired twice, forcing Cutler and the others to scatter for cover among the rocks outside the canyon entrance. "They're trying to flank us," Tom shouted, firing at a shadow moving along the canyon wall. For several tense minutes, the night was filled with the crack of rifles and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Donovan maintained his position, keeping the attackers from storming the narrow entrance, but he knew their advantage of position wouldn't last forever. A scream from behind him made Donovan whirl around. One of Barrett's men had somehow scaled the canyon wall and was now grappling with Elena near the horses. Without hesitation, Donovan ran toward them, his heart pounding with a fear unlike any he'd known before. Elena was fighting fiercely, but her attacker outweighed her by 100 pounds. As Donovan watched in horror, the man struck her across the face, sending her stumbling backward. Before he could reach them, the attacker drew his knife. "No," Donovan roared, raising his rifle. But before he could fire, Elena pulled something from her belt, a small knife she must have kept hidden, and plunged it into her attacker's thigh. The man howled in pain, his own knife clattering to the ground. Donovan reached them in the next moment, the butt of his rifle connecting solidly with the man's temple, dropping him unconscious. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, helping Elena to her feet. "No," she touched her cheek, which was already swelling, "but there are more coming. I saw them climbing the walls." Gunfire from the entrance confirmed her words. Jimmy shouted a warning as two more of Barrett's men breached the canyon. Tom returned fire, but in the confusion, Donovan could see they were being surrounded. "This way," he said, pulling Elena toward a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. "There might be a way out." They had barely taken 3 steps when a shot rang out, and Donovan felt a searing pain tear through his left side. He staggered, leaning heavily on Elena. "Donovan," her voice seemed to come from very far away. "Keep going," he managed, even as his vision began to darken at the edges.
Get to safety.
The last thing he remembered was Elena's face above his, her eyes fierce with determination as she dragged him toward shelter. Then darkness claimed him. Donovan awoke to pain and the gentle touch of cool hands on his forehead. Opening his eyes slowly, he found himself looking up at a rough wooden ceiling, sunlight filtering through small windows. He tried to sit up, only to gasp as pain lanced through his side. "Be still," Elena's voice commanded. She appeared at his side, dark circles under her eyes but relief evident in her expression. "The bullet went through clean, but you lost much blood." "Where are we?" he asked, his voice rough with thirst. "A trapper's cabin. Tom knew of it. We brought you here after." She stopped, her composure faltering briefly.
After you were shot.
Memory returned in fragments, the ambush, the fighting, the burning pain of the bullet. "Jimmy, Tom." "Jimmy took a bullet in the arm but will recover. Tom is unharmed."
They have gone to find help.
Donovan tried again to sit up, more carefully this time. Elena supported him, helping him lean against the wall. The cabin was small but solid, a single room with a stone fireplace where a pot bubbled, filling the space with the smell of something savory.
How long was I unconscious?
2 days. Elena busied herself pouring water into a tin cup. The fever broke last night. 2 days. Barrett's men could have reached Helena by now or returned with reinforcements. We need to move. Not yet, you are too weak. Elena handed him the water. Drink, then I will check your wound. Donovan drank gratefully, studying Elena over the rim of the cup. Her cheek was bruised and a small cut at her temple had been cleaned and bandaged. Despite her obvious exhaustion, she moved with purpose, gathering herbs and clean bandages. "You saved my life," he said as she carefully unwrapped the bandage at his side. "You saved mine first." Her fingers were gentle as she examined the wound. "It is healing well. My mother taught me much about treating such injuries." "Thank you." The words felt inadequate for what she had done, for the care reflected in her every movement. Elena's hand stilled. "I thought you would die," she said quietly. "When you fell, there was so much blood. I have seen many wounds, but none has frightened me as yours did." The naked emotion in her voice struck Donovan with unexpected force. He caught her hand in his. "It takes more than Barrett's men to kill me." She met his eyes then, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had been ready to name before. Slowly giving him time to pull away, Elena leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a kiss so gentle it made his heart ache. When she drew back, uncertainty flickered across her face.
I should not have.
Donovan caught her hand again. "Yes, you should have." With his free hand, he touched her bruised cheek. "I've been running from connection for so long, I forgot what it felt like to care about someone more than myself."
And now,
Now I'm terrified, he admitted with a rueful smile. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of living, only of losing you. Elena's smile was like sunrise after a long night. Then we must make sure that does not happen. For 3 more days, they remained at the cabin, Donovan regaining strength while Elena tended his wound. They spoke of many things during those days, of her childhood straddling 2 cultures, of his dreams for the broken arrow, of the futures they had imagined for themselves before fate brought them together. In the quiet of the small cabin, walls built over years began to crumble, replaced by something new and fragile but infinitely stronger. On the 4th morning, they heard horses approaching. Donovan, now able to stand and move slowly, positioned himself by the door with his revolver while Elena watched from the window. "It is Tom," she said with relief.
and others with him.
Tom had indeed returned, bringing with him the territorial marshal and 3 deputies. The marshal, a grizzled man named Harlow with hard eyes but a reputation for fairness, listened gravely to their story. "Barrett's been causing trouble all over the territory," he confirmed, "but he's got friends in high places. Without evidence, it's his word against yours."
What about the attack on my people? Elena asked.
"The burning of our village. Frontier justice is complicated when it comes to Indian affairs, ma'am. Not saying it's right, but that's how it is." The marshal rubbed his beard. "Now an attack on white settlers like Mr.
Pierce here, that's something I can act on.
So Barrett gets away with murder as long as his victims are Apache?" Donovan's voice was hard with anger. "I didn't say that," the marshal held up a hand. "I said we need evidence. If your lawyer friend in Helena is real, and if he's got documents proving your people's claim to that land, that changes things." "So we continue to Helena," Elena said. "We do," Donovan agreed.
"But not alone this time."
The marshal nodded. "I'll escort you myself. Barrett's men ambushed a rancher and shot him. That's enough to bring them in at least, and if we can prove Barrett ordered it, well," he smiled grimly.
"Even his friends in high places won't be able to save him then."
The journey to Helena took another 2 days, their pace slowed by Donovan's injury. The marshal and his deputies rode with them, eyes constantly scanning the horizon for signs of Barrett's men. But the journey passed without incident, suggesting that Barrett believed them dead or had called off the hunt for other reasons. Helena in 1872 was a city in transition, its gold rush origins giving way to more permanent establishments as the territorial capital. Stone buildings stood alongside weathered wooden structures, and the streets bustled with miners, businessmen, and families carving out lives on the frontier. The lawyer Elena sought, a man named Halloran, maintained an office near the courthouse. He received them immediately, his lined face lighting with recognition when Elena introduced herself. "Miss Zamores, yes, I worked with your chief on several land claim matters. I was deeply troubled when I heard reports of violence at your settlement." He gestured for them to sit. "Please tell me everything." For the next hour, Elena recounted the attack on her people, while Donovan described their encounters with Barrett's men. Halloran listened attentively, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. When they finished, he sat back with a grim expression. "What Barrett has done is criminal, but proving it won't be easy. The territorial courts have been reluctant to recognize Apache land claims, even with treaty documentation." "But you have such documentation?" the marshal asked. "Indeed." Halloran pulled a file from his cabinet. "The land Barrett claims for his mining operation was recognized as Apache territory in an 1868 agreement, not a formal treaty, but a documented arrangement with the territorial government." He slid the papers across his desk.
"The problem is enforcement."
"That's where I come in," Marshal Harlow said. "Barrett's men attacked and shot a white rancher. That gives me grounds to arrest them, and by extension, to investigate Barrett himself." Halloran nodded slowly. "It's a start, but Barrett has powerful friends, including Judge Wilson, who would likely hear the case." "What about the federal courts?" Donovan asked. "This involves Indian affairs and possibly treaty violations. Couldn't a federal judge review the case?" The lawyer's eyes brightened. "Mr. Pierce, that's precisely the approach I was considering. There's a federal circuit judge arriving next week who has a reputation for impartiality in Indian affairs." He turned to Elena. "If you can stay in Helena until then, I believe we can build a compelling case."
"We'll stay," Donovan said without hesitation.
The marshal stood. "I'll wire Fort Shaw for additional men. Barrett needs to answer for what he's done, friends in high places or not." As they left Halloran's office, Donovan felt a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. The path ahead remained dangerous. Barrett would not surrender his mining claims without a fight, but for the first time justice seemed possible. They secured rooms at a modest hotel near the courthouse, the marshal posting a deputy outside as precaution. That evening, Donovan and Elena dined in the hotel restaurant, both acutely aware that this was the first time they had sat together in public, sharing a meal like any other couple. "Halloran seems confident," Donovan said, watching Elena across the table. The lamplight cast warm highlights in her black hair, now arranged in a simple but elegant style more suited to the city. "Yes, but Barrett will not give up easily." Elena's fingers worried at her napkin. "Even if the federal judge rules in our favor, what then? My people are scattered or dead. The village is destroyed." Donovan reached across the table to cover her hand with his. "Then we build something new together." Elena looked up, surprise and hope mingling in her expression. "Together. If that's what you want." Donovan found himself suddenly nervous, the words he'd practiced in his mind deserting him. "Elena, I know it hasn't been long and there's still danger ahead, but these past weeks have shown me what I've been missing all these years. A life alone isn't really living at all." "What are you saying, Donovan Pierce?" A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I'm saying that I love you," he said simply. "And when this is over, I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me. The broken arrow has plenty of room for new beginnings." Elena turned her hand to clasp his. "I would like that very much." The week that followed was tense with waiting. Marshal Harlow's men located and arrested 2 of Barrett's gunmen involved in the canyon ambush, but Barrett himself remained elusive. Rumors circulated that he had left the territory, though few believed he would abandon his valuable claim so easily. Donovan's wound healed steadily under Elena's care, and they spent their days helping Halloran prepare their case and their evenings exploring Helena together. For Donovan, these quiet moments, watching Elena's face light up at a bookstore discovery or feeling her hand in his as they walked, became more precious than all the land and cattle he'd accumulated over the years. On the day before the federal judge was set to arrive, Halloran invited them to his office to review their testimony one final time. They were walking back to the hotel afterward, accompanied by a deputy, when Donovan spotted a familiar figure across the street. "Barrett," he said quietly, his body tensing. Wesley Barrett stood outside the territorial bank, deep in conversation with a well-dressed man Donovan recognized as Judge Wilson. Barrett was younger than Donovan had imagined, perhaps 40, with the polished appearance of an Easterner, tailored suit, neatly trimmed beard, and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to getting his way. As if sensing their gaze, Barrett looked up. His eyes passed over them without recognition at first, then returned to Elena with sudden focus. A cold smile spread across his face, and he said something to Judge Wilson before starting toward them. "Mr. Pierce, I presume," Barrett said as he approached, his voice cultured but with an undercurrent of steel. "And Miss Zamores, I've heard much about you both." "Mr. Barrett," Donovan acknowledged stiffly. "I believe we'll be seeing you in court tomorrow." Barrett chuckled. "I wouldn't count on that. Judge Wilson and I were just discussing the unfortunate lack of evidence in your case. Accusations without proof, from an Apache girl and a rancher with a well-known grudge against mining interests." "There's plenty of proof," the deputy beside them said, "including 2 of your men in custody who might start talking to save their necks. Former employees who acted without my knowledge or consent." Barrett waved a dismissive hand. "A shame about their overzealous methods, but the territorial court will sort that out." "The federal court," Elena corrected, her voice steady despite the tension visible in her posture. "Judge Reynolds arrives tomorrow." Something flickered in Barrett's eyes, the first sign of uncertainty. Federal intervention is hardly necessary for a simple territorial dispute. "Murder isn't a simple dispute," Donovan said. "Neither is violating government agreements with the Apache." Barrett's polished facade cracked slightly. "You're making a serious mistake, Pierce. I have investments and partnerships throughout the territory. One word from me, and you'll never sell another head of cattle in Montana." "Is that a threat?" Donovan stepped closer, his hand dropping instinctively to his sidearm. "Merely stating facts." Barrett's gaze shifted to Elena, his expression hardening. "As for you, Miss Zamores, there are still many who would question the word of an Apache over that of a respected businessman. Perhaps you should consider where your interests truly lie." Elena met his gaze without flinching. My interests lie with justice for my people, something you will soon understand. Barrett studied them both for a moment longer, then nodded curtly. We'll see, good day to you both. As he walked away, the deputy at their side muttered, I don't like this, that man's planning something. Increase security at the hotel tonight, Donovan agreed, and send word to Marshal Harlow. Barrett's still in Helena and he's desperate. That night, unable to sleep, Donovan stood by the window of his hotel room, watching the quiet street below. Barrett's appearance had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Men like Barrett didn't confront their accusers openly unless they felt confident in their position, or unless they planned something that made such confrontations irrelevant. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Elena standing there in a simple robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. I could not sleep, she said, entering when he stepped aside. Tomorrow everything changes. One way or another, Donovan agreed, closing the door. Elena moved to the window, her profile outlined against the pale moonlight. I have been thinking about what happens after, if we win, if my people's land is restored. You're wondering if you should return there, Donovan finished for her, feeling a cold weight settle in his stomach at the thought. She turned to him. No, that is not what I was thinking at all. Crossing to where he stood, she placed her hands on his chest. I was thinking that home is not a place, it is where your heart finds peace. And mine has found peace with you, Donovan Pierce. The fear that had gripped him dissolved into profound relief. Pulling her gently into his arms, he rested his forehead against hers. I was afraid you might change your mind. Never. Elena's hands moved up to frame his face. My grandmother once told me that when you find the other half of your soul, you must hold tight with both hands and never let go. You are that other half for me. Donovan kissed her then, pouring into it all the love and certainty he felt. When they finally parted, both breathless, he whispered, Marry me. When this is over, marry me. Elena's smile was radiant in the moonlight. Yes, she said simply, yes. They spent the night talking of the future, of the broken arrow, of children with her dark eyes and his stubborn determination, of building a life that honored both their heritages. In those quiet hours, the danger that awaited them tomorrow seemed distant and manageable compared to the certainty they had found in each other. Dawn broke clear and bright over Helena, as if the very day recognized the importance of what was to come. Donovan and Elena met Marshal Harlow and Halloran for breakfast, reviewing once more the evidence they would present to Judge Reynolds. Barrett was seen meeting with 3 men at his hotel last night, the marshal informed them. Known troublemakers, all of them. I've posted additional deputies around the courthouse, but stay alert. The federal courthouse, a stately brick building at the center of Helena, was already crowded when they arrived. News of the case had spread throughout the town, drawing curious onlookers and those with stakes in the outcome. Miners, ranchers, and townspeople filled the wooden benches, their murmured conversations creating a steady hum. Judge Reynolds, a tall man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, entered promptly at 9 o'clock. The courtroom rose as he took his seat at the bench. This court will now hear evidence in the matter of territorial land claims and associated criminal complaints, he announced in a resonant voice. Mr. Halloran, you may begin. For the next 3 hours, Halloran methodically presented their case, the documented Apache claim to the land, eyewitness accounts of Barrett's men attacking the settlement, the subsequent pursuit of Elena, and the ambush of Donovan's party. Elena testified with quiet dignity about the night her village was destroyed, her voice steady despite the painful memories. When Donovan's turn came, he described the attacks by Barrett's men in detail, emphasizing that they had explicitly mentioned Barrett by name. The bullet wound in his side, still healing, provided tangible evidence of the violence they had faced. Barrett's lawyer, a sharp-featured man named Lawson, cross-examined them aggressively, attempting to discredit Elena's testimony by questioning her heritage and suggesting that Donovan's motives were purely financial, a competitor attempting to undermine Barrett's mining claims. Mr. Pierce, Lawson asked, his tone deceptively casual, isn't it true that you've opposed mining operations near your ranch in the past? I've opposed illegal encroachment on my land, Donovan corrected. Just as I oppose illegal encroachment on anyone else's land, including the Apache territory Barrett has seized. And your relationship with Miss Zamores, Lawson glanced meaningfully at Elena. Is that also motivated by your concern for justice? Donovan's jaw tightened. My relationship with Miss Zamores is not relevant to these proceedings. I disagree. It speaks directly to your motivation for bringing these accusations. Before Donovan could respond, Judge Reynolds intervened. "The court will determine what is relevant, Mr. Lawson. Please restrict your questioning to the matters at hand." The morning session adjourned for lunch, during which Barrett was notably absent. His lawyer conferred urgently with several men at the back of the courtroom, their expressions grim. "Something's happening," Donovan murmured to Marshal Harlow as they observed this activity. Barrett wouldn't miss his own defense unless he had something else planned. "I've got men watching him," the marshal assured him, "but stay close to the courthouse. I don't like this either." When court reconvened, Lawson requested a brief delay, claiming his client had been unexpectedly detained. Judge Reynolds, clearly impatient, granted 30 minutes. Those 30 minutes stretched to an hour with no sign of Barrett. The courtroom grew restless, spectators muttering among themselves. Just as Judge Reynolds was about to rule on proceeding without Barrett, the courthouse doors burst open. Two deputies entered, supporting between them a battered and bloodied man Donovan recognized as one of Barrett's gunmen who had escaped arrest. "Your Honor," one deputy called, "this man has information pertinent to the case." The gunman, clearly injured but conscious, was brought forward. Marshal Harlow approached him, speaking in low tones before turning to the judge. "Your Honor, this man wishes to make a statement regarding Wesley Barrett's actions and current whereabouts." Judge Reynolds nodded gravely. "Proceed." "Barrett paid us to clear out the Apache settlement," the gunman said, his voice raspy with pain. "Said the land had gold deposits worth a fortune. When things went wrong with the girl escaping, he ordered us to find her and kill anyone helping her." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Lawson rose to object, but the gunman continued. "After you arrested my partners, Barrett got desperate. He's leaving the territory today, right now, taking a private stage to Idaho with all the money he could gather." The man coughed, wincing. "He tried to kill me too when I asked for my pay, said he was cutting all ties." "Where is he now?" the marshal demanded. "Mountain Pass Road, left about an hour ago in a black coach, 4 horses." "He's got 2 guards with him." Judge Reynolds banged his gavel as the courtroom erupted. "Marshal, I authorize you to pursue and apprehend Wesley Barrett immediately. This court will remain in session awaiting your return." The marshal was already moving. "Pierce, I could use another gun if you're willing." Donovan looked at Elena, torn between staying with her and helping bring Barrett to justice. She touched his arm. "Go," she said firmly. "Finish this." Within minutes, Donovan was riding beside Marshal Harlow and 4 deputies, galloping hard for the Mountain Pass Road that led west out of Helena. Barrett had perhaps an hour's head start, but a coach laden with luggage would move slower than their horses, especially on the steep mountain road. They rode for nearly 2 hours, the road climbing steadily into the forested mountains. Just as Donovan began to fear Barrett had somehow eluded them, they rounded a sharp bend and spotted a black coach ahead, moving at a fast clip despite the rough terrain. "There," the marshal shouted. "Spread out." As they closed the distance, one of the coach guards spotted their pursuit. He leaned from the window, revolver in hand, and fired. The shots went wide, but the message was clear: Barrett would not be taken without a fight. The marshal signaled 2 deputies to circle ahead while he, Donovan, and the others maintained direct pursuit. The coach picked up speed, rocking dangerously on the narrow road. Another shot came from the rear window, this one close enough that Donovan felt the bullet pass near his ear. The road ahead curved sharply around a steep cliff face. As the coach took the turn too quickly, one wheel lifted momentarily off the ground before crashing back down. The driver struggled to maintain control, but at that speed, on such treacherous terrain, it was a losing battle. What happened next seemed to unfold in terrible slow motion. The coach hit a large rock, the front axle snapped with a crack like a gunshot, and the entire vehicle lurched sideways. For one suspended moment, it teetered on the edge of the cliff. Then, with a splintering of wood and the terrified screams of men and horses, it toppled over the edge. By the time Donovan and the marshal reached the spot, there was only silence. Peering over the cliff edge, they saw the shattered remains of the coach 100 feet below, the bodies of men and horses motionless amid the wreckage. "My God," one of the deputies whispered. The marshal removed his hat. "Barrett's justice came from a higher court than ours, it seems." They made their way carefully down to the wreckage to confirm what they already knew. Wesley Barrett and his guards had died instantly in the fall. Among the scattered luggage were documents confirming the gunman's testimony, maps of gold deposits on Apache land, ledgers showing payments to gunmen, and letters to investors promising immense returns once the Indian problem was resolved. Evidence enough to convict him 10 times over, the marshal said grimly as they gathered the papers. Cold comfort to those who died at his hands. They returned to Helena as dusk was falling, the news of Barrett's fate spreading quickly through the town. At the courthouse, Judge Reynolds had waited, hearing additional testimony from Barrett's captured men in the intervening hours. When informed of Barrett's death and the recovered documents, he nodded solemnly. This court finds that the land in question legally belongs to the Apache people as established in the 1868 agreement, he ruled. All mining claims filed by Wesley Barrett are hereby nullified. As for the criminal matters, while the principal defendant has met his end, this court orders the full prosecution of his accomplices for murder and other crimes committed in the unlawful seizure of Apache lands. For Elena, the ruling brought a bittersweet victory. Justice had been served, but it could not bring back those she had lost. As the courtroom emptied, she stood quietly, her hand in Donovan's. "It is over," she said softly. "Yes," he squeezed her hand gently. "Are you ready to go home?" Elena looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting all they had endured together and all that lay ahead. "Home," she repeated. "Yes, I am ready." 2 weeks later, with Barrett's men awaiting trial and the territorial government acknowledging the Apache claim to the disputed lands, Donovan and Elena returned to the Broken Arrow. The ranch had continued running smoothly under Henry McAllister's capable management, though the old foreman's eyes widened considerably when Donovan introduced Elena as his future wife. "About time," was all Henry said, tipping his hat to Elena with unexpected gentleness. That evening they stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. The ranch spread before them, cattle grazing peacefully in the distance, the buildings solid and weathered against the vast Montana sky. "Is it strange to be back?" Elena asked, leaning against his shoulder. "No," Donovan said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. "It feels right, different but right." He looked down at her. "When I left here, I thought I had everything a man could want. I was never so wrong in my life." Elena smiled up at him, and now I know what matters." He drew her closer. "Not the land or the cattle or the house, but this, having someone to share it with." "Having you. My grandmother would say you have finally learned wisdom," Elena teased gently. "Your grandmother was a wise woman." Donovan's voice grew serious. "Elena, I know there will be challenges ahead. Not everyone will accept us readily. There will be those who disapprove, who try to make our life difficult." "There will," she agreed, "but we have faced worse and survived. We will face this together as well." As the last light faded from the sky, Donovan Pierce realized that the walls he had built around his heart had not simply been broken down. They had been replaced by something infinitely stronger. In finding Elena, in opening himself to love despite the risks, he had discovered a truth that would sustain them through whatever trials lay ahead. That true strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. The Broken Arrow would never be the same. It would be better, a home filled with love, a place where two cultures could meet and flourish together. And as Donovan held Elena close in the gathering darkness, he knew with absolute certainty that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along, without even knowing he was looking. He had found his heart's true home,